The fabric of our society is being torn apart, and the dignity and worth of individuals is being undermined by pervasive and disturbing advances in technology. This is contributing to crisis levels of sexual abuse of children and sexual exploitation and violence against women. These new technologies develop at breakneck speed, and we are playing catch-up, trying to deal with them, trying to get ahead of them, and trying to prevent abuse. We've actually lost our grip as a society on the basic need for a culture of respect, and we are seeing generations traumatised by the impact of the offences that are being committed against them. Today I will speak on a broad range of issues, particularly focusing on some technological tools which are being used as weapons. Our role as regulators is critical in this, and our slow speed of responding is actually failing generations of young people. A lot of the details of what is happening in our society are quite disturbing, but when I have been looking into this issue and speaking to people about it, I've realised that it can be quite difficult to understand because there's almost like another language associated with some of these tools. And unless you are directly affected, unless you have been targeted or your partner has been targeted or your child has been targeted, unless you're directly involved in the research, it's quite difficult to sit there and break down what is actually being used and how. So I will go into some detail around the tools that are being used to commit these abuses. Starting with deepfakes. So a deepfake is an AI-generated image or video that can use someone's existing image or video and transforms it in various ways. Now, the majority of deepfakes that are created, over 95% of them, are related to I may pause my speech and come back to a more appropriate topic momentarily. It's okay. Okay. I will do my best to tailor my comments given the audience we have in the public gallery.
Honourable Member, we are dealing with the matter.
Thank you.
Just give me 1 second.
Thank you.
David from Education Unit. It would be useful if our visitors could move on to the next. Thank you. The Honourable Michelle Hoffman.
Thank you, President. So on the topic of deepfakes, the majority of these, in fact, almost all of them, we're looking at research that is saying 96, 97, 98% of these images that are created or videos that are created are sexualised content. The vast majority are being produced against the consent of the person who is being depicted in the image. And we're seeing this used as a tool. What's quite disturbing is that it's being used against a lot of women and children by people that they know as a form of intimidation, as a threat, as a way to try and cause harm to them. And the public figures that are speaking out against it, and the everyday women who are speaking out against it, they then see an escalation in the abuse that they suffer from this. So what they object to in the first instance, the depravity that they then are subjected to is exponential. One of the issues with this is that it is not law enforcement does not have the resources or the laws to effectively combat this. So there are federal laws that outlaw the sharing of deepfake material without consent, but those federal laws do not criminalise the creation of those images and videos. There are 3 states around Australia who have criminalised that, but we do not have that law, that protection here in Australia. Under the federal laws that were passed in 2024, there's been 1 prosecution which has been brought last month. So we are seeing a real gap in what we are trying to enforce in terms of opposing this criminal behaviour and actually how effective we can be in that space. One of the specific forms of technology that has been used, and this is quite relevant to deepfake images, is that of nudifying apps. So I will talk you through, at a high level, a recent trend and phenomenon that came about at the end of last year when Grok, an AI tool that is linked with X, which is formerly Twitter, added a feature that allows users to edit images. Now, this sparked a trend in late 2025, the put her in a bikini trend, where users would upload an image of people they knew, colleagues, classmates, and Grok would edit the image. Some people have said this is relatively tame, but it is still a violation of a woman's image or a child's image in the majority of cases. It's a violation of anyone's image. And it rapidly devolved into worse examples. The platforms do not technically permit nudification in their technology, but users very quickly have found ways to circumnavigate that and to create quite depraved images. An analysis of just a short period of time since that feature was introduced found that in 11 days, the AI chatbot Grok created over 3 million sexualised images, and over 23,000 of those contained images that were or appeared to be images of children. This is an appalling use of technology, and we have not done anything to combat it. We have not done anything to push back against this technology. The government has the power to ban these apps, but we haven't seen that happen. And I'll bring these examples back to more of the theme of the motion that we are discussing today, because all of these activities and this culture that's proliferating, that this is acceptable, this mainstreaming of changing of images, which used to be mostly done on the dark web, is now being used across mainstream platforms. And it's really linked to the sexual assault statistics that we are seeing here in Western Australia. So the number of sexual assault victims in our latest statistics, which is up to the end of 2024, increased by 9% to the end of 2024 to 3,721 victims, which is the highest recorded number of victims in the 32-year time series that we have. For victims of sexual assault, most were female, 86%, and nearly half, 45%, were between 10 and 17 years of age. So we look at the large numbers of sexual abuse that are going on in our society, and we look at these technologies that are contributing to the acceptance of exploitation of children and violence against women. And it seems to be everywhere. Many of you may be aware that Roblox came under fire last year because, despite claiming to have sufficient controls in place to be protecting children, parents started to realise how easy it was for children to encounter inappropriate content and also to interact unsupervised, with adults on the gaming platform. So the challenge here is that, yes, there is an individual responsibility for parents to be aware and working with, looking very closely, trying to understand the technology. But what we are seeing is that parents are trusting in the messages of these platforms which say that they're providing sufficient controls and that they won't have access to these. But when studies are done and accounts are created to try and test these, we're actually exposing significant flaws. So a test was done with a closed group of profiles, some of which were adults, some of which were children, and some of the issues that they found were that there are still significant risks because avatars belonging to children, and this was through an experiment, but in this test, avatars belonging to children could still access highly suggestive environments. We're talking about hotel spaces where there's a female avatar wearing fishnet stockings gyrating on a bed, and other avatars in sexually suggestive poses, public bathrooms, choosing fetish accessories to dress up in. All of this is things that our children are being exposed to, and this is concerning in the online space. But even more concerning is that children as young as 5 were being able to found to communicate with adults while playing games on the platform. And test avatars registered as an adult was able to ask a 5-year-old for Snapchat details using coded language. So the platforms say that they are monitoring this, they're stopping this behaviour, but it's still happening and it's still prolific, and it's resulting in very disturbing outcomes and trauma for our children who are being exposed to it. I'll move on to TikTok, which a lot of people think is a lot of fun, but the darker side of it is that it's actually being used as a child abuse exchange method. There are studies that have been done looking into TikTok that have found enormous volume of accounts offering children for live-streamed sexual abuse. There's also a growing genre in TikTok videos promoting incest. And there's some especially distressing genre depicting disabled little girls being passionately kissed and fondled by men purporting to be the child's father in homes and even in what appears to be institutional or medical settings. While these sorts of content are said to violate TikTok's guidelines, nothing is being done about them. The digital grooming of young women is being done constantly on TikTok. They're funneling young women towards OnlyFans. They're being promoted and rewarded. On these platforms, there's some very disturbing cases of young women who have found themselves in this spiral and have seen it as an opportunity for making money, but have had to deal with significant trauma as a result of that. We're hearing people come out and uncover stories of how they used to work for agencies trying to promote these accounts, trying to run profitable businesses, but pushing young girls into this pipeline of OnlyFans, and they're finding that the boundaries are broken down, that they are encouraged to do more and more depraved acts for money and to submit to violent acts. I didn't mention previously, but in the Grok trend that happened, some of the requests for images of women, the requests deteriorated into requests for them to be portrayed, give her bruises, create an image where she's bleeding. This promotion of violence against women, which goes against what we should be standing for as a society. One more issue I will raise is that of child sex abuse dolls, which have been sold on online platforms to people around the world, including people in Australia. In particular, there's been a recent case come to light where a West Australian man, Jason William Forbes, has been charged by police with an attempt to kidnap a young girl. He was intercepted and became a person of interest to the police because he was importing child sex abuse dolls. Now, there's been campaigns against these. These are... there are some platforms that have removed these. So Etsy, Alibaba, Made in China, Shein, Temu and Wish have all taken action to remove these products from, they're no longer sold, at least not in Australia. But there are concerns being raised by organisations like Collective Shout that these products are still available on platforms like Amazon, and these concerns are really, really disturbing because they're not alleviating a problem, they're actually exacerbating it. They're actually creating a sense that this is an acceptable behaviour to be pursuing children and abusing children in this way. When we sit back and look at all this array of technology, all this damage that is being done to our children and young people, it's quite overwhelming and it feels quite hopeless because I've spoken in broad terms about the sheer volume of what is going on and how it's impacting our culture. But every single incident, there is a person who is affected. There is a person who has to live with that trauma and has to live with that abuse. And when we look at the number of tools and how quickly they come up and how hard it is to stop them, it can be quite hopeless. It's not what we want to see in our culture, this normalisation of abuse against women and children in particular, this dehumanisation, this removal of people's dignity. So what can we do about it? On an individual level, people can take action. You can boycott companies that are engaging in these practices and refusing to take away these tools. You can stand up and actually protect and defend people who are victims and survivors of this sort of abuse. Our women and children are in dire need of that. But here right now, here in this place, we have the chance to do more. Here in this place, we can take action to protect and defend people. We want to prevent as much of this as we can. We can ban nudifying apps. We can criminalise the creation of deep fake material. We can look at controls on platforms, on children's gaming platforms, on Roblox, on social media, on TikTok. We can do more to educate, to help parents to understand the risks, to help young people, our future generation, understand what is and is not acceptable behaviour, that violence against anyone is unacceptable behaviour. We can support those who've gone through these traumatic experiences. We can try and do what we can to help them, but what we find is that the enforcement mechanisms, the enforcement measures are not there. We find, I've spoken to women who've been going through this on a personal level, dealing with horrendous abuse through deepfake images and nudifying apps, who've been going through it for months and months, through 7, 8 months. And the ability to actually take action is so limited. The eSafety Commissioner does have powers to remove material, but as soon as an image is up, it just gets shared so widely that it's so hard to actually remove it and so hard to actually get convictions and enforcement against the people who are committing these abuses. And once it's up, the damage is done. We can't reverse that. We can't take it away. So Today we raise this issue, broad-reaching issue, in the context of the serious crisis we are seeing in sexual abuse cases and sexual exploitation, particularly of our women and children, but not only of women and children. And I ask you to all work with us. Let's work together to introduce measures so that we can combat this and try and protect and safeguard our future generations. If we are serious about combating child sex abuse, if we are serious about combating violence against women, we must act here, and we must act now.